Hello, and welcome to another delightful episode of Julian Reacts to Jenna Moreci's videos. Yeah, people want these. I don't know. Now, Jenna has been putting out a lot of videos lately that I just didn't really have anything to say about. And I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of strong feelings about this one either, but she is talking about characters again, and that is 100% my wheelhouse. And so I listened to it, and I did have a few things that I kind of wanted to say. So I figured, you know what? Let's put up a poll and see what other people think. And wouldn't you know it, put up a poll on my YouTube, and everybody was like, yes, we want to see you react to this video. Now, one thing I want to be clear about, well, okay, a couple of things I want to be clear about. One, neither myself nor Jenna are the god of writing. Our advice is just that. It's just advice. It's not rules. It's not something you have to do. If the advice doesn't help you or resonate with you, then it's probably just not the advice that you need. And I will say that Jenna has been getting a lot better on her channel about being honest and treating her advice as advice instead of how she used to do it, which is treating it as though she is 100% correct and anybody who doesn't do it her way is bad and terrible and not good at their writing. I will say, however, though, that her channel continues to be sort of babies first. So I watch her because it can be entertaining sometimes, but not because I really need any of her advice anymore. But if you are just starting out, she can be a really good place to go. I know a lot of people first dip their toes into the world of Authortube through Jenna. She is a great gateway drug, but please seek out other voices here on Authortube besides just the big names. And I'm not just saying this for myself. There are a lot of really great Authortubers with smart ideas here, but you gotta look for them. You can't just count on the big names, especially since a lot of the big names give you really simple, starting out, babies first type advice, and we like a little bit more depth and nuance on my channel. So obviously today Jenna is going to be talking about writing realistic characters, something which she says that she is praised for. And I say, okay, I'm going to try really hard not to spend this entire video shading her as much as people would probably like that. I'm just going to get it out of the way here. I do not find her characters realistic in the slightest. And I might mention that a little bit further into the video, but I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum. However, just because I don't feel like she succeeds at writing realistic characters doesn't mean that she doesn't know what you should do to help yourself write realistic characters. So yes, I think Jenna is well within her rights to give you advice about writing realistic characters. However, if you do look at her books, I don't find any of her characters realistic. And the last thing I want to say is, yes, I have sped her up and I have also trimmed down some of the content because we don't need her full, whole points for me to comment on it. So if you want to see the entire video, you can go to her channel. That's what her channel is for. She has been sped up and some things have been cut for time, including her ad read at the beginning. Now that we have got all of that great long intro out of the way, let's get into the reaction, shall we?
Today I am breaking down my 10 best tips for writing realistic characters. If your issue is realism, if you're not sure if your characters are believable or relatable, don't fret, my pet. Let me show you the way. I may or may not have saved the most painful tip for last, but I did it because I care. Actually, I did it because I'm a bitch. What were you expecting?
Okay, so I wanted to save this intro for a reason. By the way, if you hear noises in the background, that's Nigel. He's keeping me company. And that is that I wanted to point out something that she's been doing in her videos lately. And I'm not pointing this out because I think it's bad. I'm pointing it out just so other people know. Because if you want to support her or me, any of your favorite creators on YouTube, the algorithm likes watch time. It doesn't even consider a video to have been viewed, quote unquote, unless the viewer has watched it for a certain amount of time. Views are super important to the algorithm, to getting your videos out there. So she's trying to tempt you in and be like, a couple of these are really spicy and you're gonna have to watch and find out, so that she can get you to watch enough of the damn video for it to count as watch time. So if you are interested in helping out your favorite creators, I'm not saying you have to watch a video you're hating, obviously. But if you want to help out your favorite creators, just put that video on in the background. Let it play as long as you can, because that is going to help them. But that's like a little trick that I've noticed that she's doing to try to get that watch time, because YouTube is a real bitch and we are all slaves to the algorithm.
Number Listen, observe. One of the most common questions I get about writing characters is, how do I write a blank character? How do I write a mean character? How do I write a heroic character? How do I write a likable character? Another version of this question is, what traits should I give to a character to make them redeemable? What traits should I give to a character to make them likable? In situations like this, writers are looking for a formula. Just add a drop of this trait and a dash of this cliche, and behold, you've written a pile of shit. The problem is these writers ignore the obvious.
Okay, I'm going to stop her because I have to interrupt her every now and then. I probably already let her go too long, but for the YouTube things, I have to keep interrupting. Creating characters is a whole complicated soup of trying to make them realistic and trying to make them interesting, and potentially trying to make them likable as well. You do want your reader to want to read them.
You are around people every day of your life. Even if you're a recluse like myself, you see them on TV. You communicate with them on the internet. Observe them.
So she mentioned seeing them on TV, which for me is mostly like, I don't watch the news, so the people I would be observing on TV are characters in shows. So that's not exactly studying people, like realistic people, because I don't know if you know this, but characters in TV shows don't always act like realistic people. Because they're characters, and that's the thing about characters. It's that tightrope of like, seems realistic, but is also entertaining that we're all trying to meet. But I do recommend people watching, like she's suggesting, and I do it all the time. I need to find out the source for this quote. I'll probably put it on the screen. But one of my favorite quotes is, writers are empathy machines. So you have to be able to see people and feel what those people are potentially going through. You have to be really good at empathy for others before you can write realistic characters. And I think people watching kind of falls under that, where you're not only just studying people and how they behave, you're wondering what they might be thinking, what they might be feeling in any given situation.
If you want your characters to be redeemable, what do you personally find redeemable among humankind? If you want your character to be likable, what do you personally like in a human being? It's really that simple. Stop trying to overcomplicate realism. If you're looking for a formula, you're doing it wrong. Number 2, dimensions. Whenever someone says, this character is the comic relief, or this character is the damsel in distress, I cringe. Sometimes we generalize for the sake of brevity, but if you are genuinely writing your characters in this format with one dimension in mind, then you are making a huge mistake. I promise you.
I mean, yeah, again, I'm gonna agree with most of her points. Again, she's very on the surface, kind of lacks nuance, but obviously, if you're just making your character out to be one thing, they're not gonna feel realistic.
They are not realistic. Real people, even the shallowest people, have dimensions. They do not exist to fulfill a single expectation. They have strengths, weaknesses, goals, insecurities. These are things you should be fleshing out in your character.
Figuring out how they would behave in certain situations, and situations where they would behave differently than readers or other characters might expect. Just looking at all of that, because if you are just setting out to write yourself some archetypes, like she says, you're probably not going to get the most realistic characters. Nigel, no, you cannot be on my keyboard right now.
Their wants, their desires, their fears, their quirks. If you're looking at your characters and realizing they're completely one note, congratulations, you done fucked up. Give them some dimensions or readers will come for you.
So goals and insecurities are definitely a really good place to start. Your characters should want things, and they should have things that personally, internally hold them back from getting those wants, and things aren't always rational. So remember that your character might be held back by something, have issues that aren't exactly rational, and as long as you make sure you flesh that out well enough, then your reader will probably be very interested to follow them. I was going to try not to comment on it too much, but also, her characters are very one-dimensional, and many readers do not come for her. So while we are talking about writing realistic characters right now, there is a place for characters that are very archetypal and one-note, because clearly lots of people enjoy her book and her characters are that. So there is a place for it, and she may have really mastered making it feel as though the characters aren't one note sometimes, although some of her characters are very clearly one note. So like I said, I would not personally study her work if you're looking to write realistic characters. However, you could study her work if you're looking to write archetypes that are still entertaining to a lot of readers. There's a big difference between an entertaining character and a realistic character. I am way more into realistic characters, but there clearly is a place in the writing world for characters who are just archetypes but entertain the reader. Books are supposed to be entertaining, at least fiction ones.
Which brings us to number 3, character profiles. The easiest way to start building complex, realistic characters is through character profiles. A character profile is kind of like a social media profile for a fictional person, except instead of filling out their favorite book and favorite food, you are filling out important details about their actual life. You are listing everything from their culture and race to their physical description and their sexuality. Personality, values, beliefs, economic class, all of that goes into the character profile.
This is one that I really wanted to comment on because I have mentioned before when talking about her videos that I'm in favor of you doing whatever you need to do to create a character or world, whatever. So like if you want to make a character sheet or whatever, character profile for every single one of your characters, the blacksmith that we only see once, you really want to make him a character profile. It's never going to see the light of day. That's fine. You do you, boo-boo. But also, this is the flip side. I think people can get too bogged down in this. Now, this is coming from a pantser, so keep that in mind. If you are a very, very strict plotter, you may take one look at what I'm about to say and scoff your heart out. But if you are somewhere in the middle or you're leaning towards pantser, you can overwork it. It's like overworking bread. So you can dig yourself into this like hole of I have created so much about this character that I don't know how to make that happen on the page. Or you forget to make things happen on the page because you've already got it written down in the character profile, and therefore it's like already in your brain that it's somewhere, and therefore it must be on the page. Or you find that when you get to writing, the character profile that you've written doesn't work anymore. And then you get into this whole panic of like, oh shit, I've written all this stuff down and now it's not working because the story's going in a new direction. So do be careful about getting too entrenched in detailed character profiles. Like I said, this is just me. I don't really plan that much about my characters beforehand. I really feel them out as the story progresses. And I don't have a problem with people who want to write character profiles and stuff like that. Just like make sure it doesn't keep you from actually developing the character within the story, the place where it's really important to develop the character.
This is where you can get incredibly detailed. What is their gender expression? What is their hair texture? I could list everything you should include in a character profile right now, but we will be here all day. Plus, I've already got a video on that. It's linked below.
Do you guys want me to go through her writing character profiles video? I think it's older, but would you be interested if I looked at it?
Create character profiles for any character that occurs regularly enough in your novel to warrant one. It will...
One more thing about character profiles, while I don't write them beforehand, I do take notes about the character as I go. So I do have a notebook for every single project, and in that you will find brief descriptions of the characters after I have described them in the book, as well as a few other details. Basically, it's just stuff I don't want to forget, so that if I'm writing along and I'm like, did this character do this? Like if it's important that the character is left-handed, I'll write it in my notes. So that later, when I'm writing along, I can stop and be like, wait, which hand is this character's primary hand? And then I can just check my notes and be like, oh yeah, left-handed. I don't go really deep. They're usually a short paragraph long about the character, but it's enough to help me remember stuff that I've come up with so far for later in the story.
Absolutely help with their realism. Number 4, the cishet white, conventionally attractive, able-bodied, neurotypical, mentally healthy male does not exist. Okay, he does, but he exists in very small numbers. A lot of writers craft their characters and go with what they believe is the default. This usually means a cisgendered straight character, typically male, sometimes female. They're white, they're conventionally attractive.
They're usually conventionally attractive, but don't think they're hot, you know? They're like, yeah, I'm so ugly with my perfect hourglass figure and my long, beautiful, flowing hair.
They have no physical disabilities, they have no mental illnesses of any kind, and they are neurotypical. And they are often either very muscular and athletic, or they are very trim and petite. I am sure this person exists, but I do not know a single human being who fits this description. And a lot of people look like they tick all the boxes, but maybe they have ADHD or PT.
She's not wrong, and I really agree with this point. I've done a whole video kind of talking about diversity in books. I think diversity in books is incredibly important, and much like Jenna, I say you can die mad about it if you want to bitch about, oh, there wouldn't be anything but white straight people in my book because blah, 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 dumb reasons. I don't care. Stop being a baby, put diversity in your book.
PTSD or a chronic illness. Every single person on this planet knows someone who is queer, someone with a mental illness, and of course we all know people of color. This world is a big ol' mashup of different kinds of people, and if you are not taking all of them into consideration, I promise you, you are not writing realistic characters.
And remember, if there's something you want to write that you're not sure about, please just ask people in that community. It's not hard. You are a straight, but you want to write a gay character and you're not sure you're doing it correctly. Ask someone who's gay. It's that simple. Ask multiple people who are gay. Seriously.
Number 5, people share traits. This character is the hero, this character is the virgin, this character is the bully, and this book is the worst. Obviously, certain characters are going to fill specific roles. For example, the protagonist, the antagonist, and the love interest. But when it comes to defining specific traits, you don't gotta be choosy. I don't know if you know this, but more than one person can be an asshole at a time.
Oh yes, Jenna. Many people in your books are assholes at one time. Most of them. All of them? Very nearly all of them. Yes, I know, I promise not to throw too much shade, but once again, I find that her characters are incredibly one-dimensional, and if they share multiple traits, it's just that they're all snarky.
Asshole gene doesn't have to be limited to your villain. Likewise, your hero doesn't have to be the only one with a moral compass, your love interest doesn't have to be the only one who's attractive, and your comic relief doesn't have to be the only one who's funny. People have things in common in the real world, so why not reflect that in the fictional world as well? On the flip side, number 6, people are not identical. Just because characters share traits does not mean they are carbon copies of one another. Two characters can be funny, but do they express the same brand of humor?
I promise not to throw too much shade. I promised. I can't do it. I find that all the characters in her story do have the same brand of humor, and it's hers.
Perfect example of this done very poorly is the movie Easy A. All the characters have the same sarcasm to the point where their dialogue is interchangeable, and it completely ruined the realism of the film. Another horrid example of this is the movie Beastly, and we all know how that went. Down in flames. Everyone spoke in the same wannabe teen angst slam poetry manner. It was silly and embarrassing, and most importantly, it wasn't at all realistic.
That's kind of how I found the characters to be in Neverworld Wake. Everybody talked like a 40-year-old trying to write teenagers, and like the voices were not differentiable. Is that a word? I could not differentiate between the voices to save my life. Like, it was bad. So if you wanted a book example of where I thought that like voice was done incredibly poorly, character voice, Neverworld Wake.
Number 7, realism doesn't mean info dumping. A lot of newbie writers believe that in order to create realistic characters, we have to info dump. We need to provide every detail about the character, their entire backstory, their deepest scars and wounds. And yet,
I don't think this is necessarily that newbie writers believe this. I think that they're just new. They're just new and they don't know how to weave this stuff into the story yet, and that's how you end up with info dumps. It takes practice. It takes time to get good at figuring out when to weave in the important things and which things even are important. So don't give yourself too hard of a time if you're just starting out and you've got some info dumps. Just keep practicing, keep figuring out, keep honing it and whittling it down and figuring out what is important for the audience to know about your characters and when it's important for them to know it.
yes, it is very helpful to know this information about the character. It will help you craft them in a realistic manner. But you do not need to include any information in your novel unless it is necessary and beneficial to the plot. For example, it is always helpful to list a character's skin color. The skin is the largest organ on the human body, and it allows readers to visualize what they look like. But we do not need to know the details of their tragic backstory unless it has a direct relevance to the plot at hand.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I don't know that you have to describe the skin color, but it's helpful for picturing the character, like skin, hair, eyes. I also usually like to try to pick some kind of feature about them that's unusual, whether they're very tall or they walk with a slight limp, or maybe they've just painted their nails black. You know, something that draws the eye of the character that's looking at the other character, if that makes sense.
Gather all the information you can about your characters, but choose the appropriate moments to reveal this information. And be honest with yourself about whether or not it needs to be revealed at all. Number 8, stop self-inserting.
We have a whole video about self-insert characters here on this channel. If you're interested, we go into a lot more detail and nuance about them.
Much never results in realistic characters. Note I said self-inserts, not own voices. Own voices refers to writing characters from a group you belong to that is underrepresented in fiction. It's also pretty normal to have a couple traits in common with some of your characters, just like it's pretty normal to have a couple traits in common with people you meet in real life.
This is true. Bits of myself find their way into every single one of my characters, sometimes more, sometimes less. In the book that I'm writing right now, Adventurer Mage 2, but in Adventurer Mage as well, both Valentine and Maeve are me in different ways. They both have like little tastes of like my anxieties and trauma, and also they both share some mannerisms with me, so definitely putting a bit of yourself into every character is completely expected and normal, and that is not a self-insert if a character has traits in common with you. And like I said, we go deeper into this in a video on my channel about self-inserts.
Bias has brown curly hair, and so do I, along with a bazillion other people in this world. But a self-insert is when you base a character from head to toe on yourself. No one wants to read that shit. But Jenna, I'm basing the character off of a real person. That means it's realistic, right? You'd think so, but typically self-inserts are you plus a whole lot of flourish. They're the hotter, smarter, more badass version of you.
One thing we also talk about in that video, like, go watch it. I don't feel that the problem necessarily with self-inserts is that they are you but better, as Jenna says, but I feel that they are usually shallow feeling because you know yourself really well, and so you naturally assume, and you really can't help it, that the character is coming across because you understand yourself, but the reader doesn't understand you, and all of us, myself included, are really bad at getting across ourselves in the form of a character in a way that a reader is going to completely understand, which is why it's very difficult to write a successful self-insert, in my opinion.
They're the version of you that always saves the day and gets the girl. It's tacky and embarrassing to read. If you want your characters to be realistic at all, do not do this. Number 9, quirks matter. I'm using the word quirks for lack of a better term. Personality, eccentricities, uniqueness. These things matter when you are crafting your characters. No, I am not talking about manic pixie dream girls. I'm talking about the traits, however small, that add to your character's uniqueness. They make them distinctive.
I love stupid little details about characters. Like, give me stupid little details about characters. I just about died when I was watching The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Why didn't you use the metal arm?
Well, I don't always think of it immediately. I'm right-handed.
And I was just like, that is the best thing I have heard in a long time. Like, stupid little details, like Bucky doesn't use his mechanical arm because it's his left. William Riker can't sit on chairs. Stupid details like that, small things just make my day.
What history, experiences, and cultural differences separate this character from the rest? This is one of my favorite parts of character creation because you get to be super creative and make each and every one of your characters special in their own way. Last but not least, number 10, ask people. I know you don't want anyone to read your work before it's published. People might steal your brilliant ideas. They don't want to steal them. Trust me.
She's right. She's 100% right. Nobody wants to steal your brilliant ideas. Nobody wants to steal mine either. They don't want them.
But you're never gonna know if you hit the mark unless you get people to read your characters. I'm talking beta readers, critique partners, sensitivity readers, and oh my god, editors. People need to read your book.
She's correct. She's correct. She's correct. She's correct. I'll keep singing it. She's correct.
But Jenna, what if they don't like it? Then fix it, dummy! Wouldn't you rather know your characters suck before publication as opposed to after? At least before publication, you can have a good cry and then fix your fucking book. And no, not all beta reader and critique partner feedback will be correct because people are inherently flawed. But that's why we have multiple people read our book. We look for trends among feedback. And I'm not talking about having your best friend or your mom or your wife read your book. I mean complete strangers who are totally comfortable tearing you to shreds. If these people can relate to your characters, you're on the right track. So that's all I got for you today.
Here we have a slight disagreement. I do think that you can have your best friend, your mom, and your wife read your book. Also have strangers read it. Because, like, my husband is very critical. Like, he is not gonna hold back. If there's something he doesn't like, he's gonna tell me. My mom is a great one to give it to if I want more of the praise and more of the good things. So, like, there's nothing wrong with giving it to people that you know and people in your family, especially if you know kind of how they tend to react. Like, I know my mom is probably gonna give me the softball, and my husband is gonna be as harsh as they come. That said, you should also try to get some strangers from the internet. As frustrating and annoying as it is, you shouldn't only use people that you're close to. Alright, that's it for Jenna's video, and that's it for my talk. I hope that this was helpful and hopefully slightly insightful for people. I think I covered all of the points that I wanted to cover. I hope I didn't really, miss anything. Like I mentioned before, I don't normally do these reaction videos unless I have something to say. So if you see something especially about characters and you want me to react to it, let me know. I'll give it a look. If I have something to say, maybe I'll say it. I don't know. Y'all seem to be very entertained by these. Possibly it's the shade, but I also like to be educational. I'm not only shade here, just a little bit. A little bit. And like I said, this is my opinion. Her books are wildly popular. So just because I find her characters to be flat and I prefer a more realistic character, doesn't mean that if you read her books, you'll feel the same way. So I encourage you to go check out her books. Or If you prefer more of the sassy, salty angle, I have a read-along of both of her main series here on this channel. My read-alongs are a little bit different, a little bit weird. We read through the book, but also we snark, we sass, we try to find helpful things that we as fellow authors can notice. I include funny clips, and that's just kind of how it goes. It's like MST3K, but for books. And I will be doing another read-along very soon, and we will be voting on it very soon. So if you want to support me over on my Patreon, not only are you helping me self-publish my own books, but also your votes on the next read-along will count for 2 over on Patreon. So keep that in mind. Plus, for as little as $1 a month, you get access to exclusive content never seen here on the regular channel. And that's pretty neat. Thanks again for watching, listening along with me. I hope the fact that I sped her up a little bit didn't deter you too much, but I just didn't want to be here all friggin' day. I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is I have to be doing next time. Bye!
Got this! Here's the guy there just in the nick of time! What does that make us?
Big damn heroes, sir!
Ain't we just?
Our big damn heroes for this month are Merween, Kit, Hidden Glade, Persephone, Light Julie, Anna, Belle, and Sophie, Callison, Ray, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Irene, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Sarah, Lisa, and Lennox. Oops, I did it again. I played with your heart, got lost in the game. Oh baby, baby, oops, you think I'm in love, that I'm sent from above.